Hello, this is Chris, MTGO username RexDart, and I'm back for the fifth part in the continuing series of deck techs that I'm doing for the Tribal Apocalypse format, covering some of the major archetypes that have had success in the Tribal Apocalypse Player Run event over the past couple of years. And today we're going to be looking at mid-range decks. So what is a mid-range deck? Well, a mid-range deck is a very controversial deck archetype. There are a lot of pros that would suggest that you never even touch a mid-range deck with a 50-foot pole because it tries to do too many different things at once, some people feel. But that is the idea, is that you can take a aggressive role when you need to, you can take a controlling role when you need to, you have disruption, flexible removal, board sweepers, a lot of different tools at your disposal in order to take the role that you need to take in order to win the game. And for that reason, it is a very popular deck for people to play. There's a lot of fun interactions. People like playing in that middle stage of the game, getting an advantage there, doing cool things. So it's a deck type that you do see a lot, even though it may have its critics. Now, you'll see that the deck works along several different axes. One of them is the creature base. There are a number of things you're going to want to look for in a creature base to build a mid-range deck. Something like Loxodon Hierarchy is a perfect example. It has a great enter the battlefield ability and a good body against aggro, and its sacrifice ability has applications against control. So it's sort of that perfect middle ground depending on what you're playing against. It's flexible. Other cards that have been popular: Spirit Monger, undercosted body that can quickly beat down. Cards like Deranged Hermit and Call of the Herd are examples of cards that an aggro opponent or a control opponent either cannot trade profitably with one for one. If the aggro player is trying to clear out blockers or the control player is trying to remove your guys of spot removal, neither of those cards are susceptible to that, and so they give you a lot of incremental advantage in the mid game. Any of you tried to play a Day of Judgment against a Sprouting Thrynax a couple years back during the height of Jund knows what I'm talking about there. You cannot race combo, and you really have to take a beatdown roll against it, so you tend to see targeted discards such as Duress and Cabal Therapy. You cannot hold up counter magic because you need to deploy your threats, and so you tend to see this sort of proactive removal, whether it's the discard effects or something like a Pithy Needle or a Meddling Mage. The removal needs to be flexible and able to hit multiple different things, which is a good rule in general for Legacy Tribal Wars because you never know what anyone's going to bring. But something like a Vindicate or a Detention Sphere O-Ring, Putrefy, Swords to Plowshares, taking care of most creatures in the format, all good removal to have. You want board sweepers in some number. It could be as simple as something like a Damnation or a Wrath of God, or you could try to set up something to your advantage, such as a Pernicious Deed or an Engineered Explosives. Or even if you design your deck in a certain way, you might be able to take an asymmetrical benefit out of something like a Death Cloud. These decks also tend to play mana acceleration in some number. It may be a mana dork, it may be something to get you from 2 to 4, 3 to 5, to where you can start deploying your creatures quicker in a way that you can get your board developed faster against the aggro decks. In doing so before they get you down into burn range where your guy just doesn't matter. Now, if any of you played Innistrad Block Constructed, you may have noticed that one of the most popular decks was Jund mid-range, and sometimes that happens just because card quality is so much better at that spot than it is at other spots in a format. That probably is not true for Tribal Legacy Wars because it is a huge format, but it is certainly true that there are a number of great creatures printed at the 3 and 4 spot, and card quality may be a place where you just have advantage over your opponent, as certainly these creatures reminded us this past year. Now let's take a look at a couple of decks that I've considered to be mid-range here, one probably pretty conventional and one perhaps not. This Treefolk deck, piloted by A&M1 to a first place finish in Tribal Apocalypse 49, shows that he's using a lot of the cards we were just discussing: Vindicates, Pernicious Deeds, Swords to Plowshare, flexible removal, asymmetrical board sweepers, couple of Damnations just as an unconditional kill everything reset button. He's got cards that are difficult for either a control or aggro player to deal with. The aggro player does need to clear blockers in order to get in damage, and something like a Dungrove Elder can be difficult for that. He's got Leaf Crowned Elders, which can start clogging the board with advantage with extra guys during the mid game against aggro to basically shut down this offense, or to recover from a board sweeper if you're in the position where you're having to play against control. The uh, the Treefolk Harbinger here can search up this Elder here to take care of an artifact or enchantment. He's got the Bosk Bannerets, which are his mana acceleration, so to speak, in that they will allow him to bring down his threats one turn earlier. Doran is just a beast against aggro, and also able to quickly beat down against an opponent, sort of a perfect mid-range creature there, capable of playing in either role. And you want to play as much as possible cards that are capable of taking on either one of those roles, because especially without sideboards, you don't want to have a lot of cards that are just dead in one matchup or the other, which is a general problem with mid-range decks across the board, and would certainly be a problem in this format. So usually biasing your deck a little bit to be stacked against aggro, and then having some flexible removal against, say, an enchantment or something based combo, or against control. That's generally the good way to build these decks. He's put in the Kessig Wolf Run as a way to finish off also against control, which I rather like. With the Taiga and the Kessig Wolf Run, he can Green Sun Zenith for a Primeval Titan, fetch both of those up, and Kessig Wolf Run a Dungrove Elder as a way to quickly close out the game against control in those situations where he would have to be in a race before they would take over the game. So very well built deck here, and let's take a look at the less conventional choice, which is Rebels. Well, Rebels, boy, that looks like a white weenie deck, doesn't it, when you just look at it at first? But it's not. None of these creatures are particularly impressive in terms of their power and toughness versus casting cost. The reason you play these guys is because you get an enormous amount of card advantage by using their tutor abilities. You can search for a rebel, put it onto the battlefield. That gives you both card advantage and tutoring in one package. And this clever deck here by Apology, which came in third in Tribal Apocalypse 57, used Training Grounds to make Lin Civi just absolutely bonkers, and the other guys pretty decent in terms of the cost to activate their searching ability. Of course, with all these searching effects, Brainstorm becomes amazing here, and the tutoring ability can look for a number of silver bullets, which he has put in here, in order to deal with various decks that he might face. If he needs to take out a fat creature, if he needs to take out any creature there with Bound in Silence, if he needs to gain some life with Aven Riftwatcher, if he wants protection to poke through some damage in case he needs to do that, he's got that. And he has the flexible removal here with Swords to Plowshares. If you actually play with this deck, you don't let this curve fool you. If you actually play with this deck or against this deck, it is very mid-range in the terms that it is trying to win in that middle part, or to the mid to long game, by overwhelming you with board advantage by using all these creatures. And it is certainly capable of doing that, and it's certainly capable of tutoring up the exact thing it needed. And I do have to point out that Stoneforge Mystic no longer playable off Tribe, which it was at the time. That certainly increased its matchups when it needed to close out quickly. Being able to find the right sword at the right time against the opponent in order to close out a match was certainly an advantage, but I don't think that it's something that is essential to this style of deck. I think the deck could be built to succeed without it, and certainly Apology's list here gives it a good go. Again, if you want to win a long, grindy game and then pull out a Mirror Entity and just destroy your opponent out of nowhere, Rebels are one thing you can try. Again, it's a sort of a different take at the low end in mana curve, but definitely the way it plays as a very mid-rangey style of deck. Now, I will take a look at one old-timey deck here today. This is 2001. This was played by Gerard Fabiano to 53rd place in Pro Tour New Orleans, which was extended format. And you can see Gerard Fabiano was not the highest placed player with this deck in the event, but I like the idea of Gerard Fabiano, a player we remember today, playing Gerard's Verdict. Kind of amusing. You must have enjoyed casting that. This deck shows a lot of the things we were talking about. It's got Duress there against control and combo. Funeral Charm, a very versatile card which can combat aggro as removal, or can also be used against a control opponent. He has the versatile removal here with Swords to Plowshares, some 2-for-1 with Tithe, Riverbower and Spectral Links with the regeneration ability can be difficult either for an aggro or control opponent. They can pose trouble. The Disenchant and the Seals, again, more versatile removal here. And Hunted Wumpus, amusingly, not a card you would ever expect to see in the Legacy Tribal Wars event, because if you play something like this, you're just about begging for somebody to drop an Emrakul or an Iona or something nasty on you. But it's something that he could play back in an era where the blue decks often had no creatures at all, and the aggro decks probably would have emptied their hand of Jackal Pups and Mog Fanatics by the time you got to deploy this. So certainly something you could get away with there that we couldn't get away with now. But overall, a deck that exemplifies a lot of the principles we were talking about here. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this look at mid-range decks. If your tribe has a lot of guys that just have immense quality at the 3, 4, 5 spot, it could be something to look at. You can certainly build it in a way that it has a very good matchup against aggro, and if you do so and you throw in just a touch of anti-control and anti-combo in your support slots, you may have a winner there. So it's something to explore with your tribe if your tribe supports it. So anyways, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next week for more deck techs.